Hey everybody, Larry, Fort Worth Memories Museum and Groups. It's Tuesday, it's 10 a.m. and Rick and Mary, or Mary and Rick, have a special guest, so it's y'all show.
Good morning, Larry. Thank you so much. Before we get started, I just want to tell you we had a great Fort Worth Memories 10th birthday party
Right?
the other day, and it was really a lot of fun. So
Yeah, I
did
saw
that.
the pictures. It looked like it was a great
We
time.
had one disaster after it was over. There was a gentleman there, and I thought he's in his 80s. He's 96, Army vet. And Sunday, the day after, he had a bad fall in the bathroom and just almost took his eye. 120 something stitches inside and out.
Wow.
My goodness.
But he's still in Peter Smith. But they took him originally to Scott and White or somewhere, and they said, no, trauma, you need to go there. But, I mean, this guy was really agile. Rick met him, and
Yeah.
he came with the karaoke singers. He said, I said, do you sing too? And he said, no, I'm a little bit old for that. But I'd never thought he's 96.
He
Wow.
might not have any songs he knows.
Surprising.
But
Yeah.
Rick said, we need to get him to roll call.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Get him well and get him over there.
Yeah, he must be a Korea vet.
Well, he's 96 and he's
Army.
right on the.
Yeah, because he
probably
would have had to
Korea.
be like Jack Stone going at 15 if he
15,
was World War II. But yeah, that'd be great. He clearly had much more fun than I had at the
Oh, you had to.
The-
Oh, yeah, you had that
memorial
deal
for
with
my
your
father-in-law. Oh my goodness.
How did that go?
It was very odd. It was, I can't even describe it any other way. But while we were there, so my husband, his dad left him a trunk like that, U.S. House of Representatives, because his grandfather, Alvin Staffeld, worked in the FBI, was number 3 in the FBI during his time there. And he left a chest, and my husband didn't open it because his dad made this whole big thing about everything you need to know about your family, all this stuff's all in that chest. And so we took it to Waco to open the thing up, and there's a lot of neat stuff in there, and there's some family history, like going back and doing the heredity thing. But he was disappointed. But I'm like going through this stuff, going, oh my gosh, there's a whole brand new newspaper from December 9th, or maybe the 8th, December, I think it was the 9th. But I mean,
41.
the paper's brand new. There's one for the day after Kennedy got shot, brand new. There's some Life magazines in plastic, and there's just all kinds of stuff in there that I'm looking through going, no, you don't just throw this away.
Yeah.
There's a lot of neat stuff here. But yeah, it was quite it was an interesting, let's just say it at that. Like the guy who owned the bar, because my father-in-law, his place that he always hung out was the Crying Shame in Waco. It's a bar. And he played the games there and everything. But all he wanted was everybody to go to the bar, have a drink, and remember him. And like the guy who owned the bar got up and said a few things like, he was supposed to be the minister or whatever. And then he said, anyone else got anything to say? And I knew my husband and sister-in-law weren't going to say anything. So I did, and I read the poem, The Dash. I know you guys have probably heard it. It's really impactful, and I talked about Charlie and about his dash. And then they said, anybody else got anything to say? And not even his girlfriend of all those years. Nobody got up and said anything.
It's a good thing you did.
So it was very odd. It was, one of the ex-wives showed up, so that was interesting. The ex-wife and the girlfriend. The whole thing was just really odd.
Wow.
So your party looked like it was a lot more fun.
Well, it was fun. We had our issues too. I'm 5 minutes away, and the karaoke guy says, I'm leaving. And I said, what do you mean you're leaving? He said, the guy said he's the new owner of the Point, and there's not going to be a party, and he doesn't like karaoke. I said, just wait there. And he said, I'm going to the coast. He was supposed to meet his family down there. So I got there, and we had some choice words, and so he said, well, I'm going to make a one-time exception but I don't want y'all ever back. I mean, I don't understand it. How?
I mean, the whole,
Really?
yeah, he was rude, and the staff was a little bit rude, and
Wow.
And we had 67 sign the register, and there were several that didn't sign. So
Yeah, it
he
looked
would have
like
had
a
like
full
four.
house.
He would have had like 4 people there if it hadn't been. I don't know, nut job.
it's weird.
Wow.
But we have a guest today, and this is my friend. This is Winky Hix, and Winky and I are kayak fishermen.
Yep.
And we work on a nonprofit together. And Winky's a retired Fort Worth Police Department lieutenant, and he's got a pretty good resume. He's done a lot of stuff. Went from being a bike patrol guy, an NPO guy, and
Yeah, I'm doing the whole patrol track
yeah.
just like everybody else. So I graduated from the police academy actually 34 years ago this past Friday. So, you hit patrol after you do your training out of the academy. And so I was in patrol for 12 years in the various assignments. MPO and bike patrol were my last 2 assignments as in
Patrol?
uniform as patrol officer, and then promoted to corporal and went to the detective's office as soon as I promoted, and actually promoted about 2 or 3 weeks before 9/11, and then stayed in the detective's office for 4 years and promoted to sergeant, which of course gets you, you go back to your kind of original assignment, back to patrol, and when you promote. So I went back as a sergeant to midnight shift, and that's where I know we've talked a little bit about Hank Nava. Hank was working over in the division that I was at when I was a midnight shift sergeant.
was that the East Division?
No, it
Or-
was actually North Side.
Okay.
Yeah. And then Hank and I had worked together in South Division, North Side. Worked as a sergeant for, I guess, another 3 years, and then almost 4 years promoted to lieutenant or sergeant. Went to IAD, went to
What's IAD?
internal affairs.
Okay.
Then started the Special Investigations Unit, which is an offshoot of internal affairs that does criminal investigations against officers. And then went to major case after that does all of the officer-involved shooting investigations, high-profile crimes, kidnappings, missing persons, high-profile missing persons. And then when I promoted to lieutenant, went back to patrol again. And
Just you
did-
bounce back.
yeah, you
every
bounce
time
back
you-
every time, and then went to the police academy as a recruiting lieutenant for a short stint there. West Division lieutenant over the detective's office, and then my final assignment over the intel unit as a lieutenant. Yeah,
So you had a pretty good run then. I mean,
yeah. I mean, in my view, a great career. I enjoyed every bit of it, and kind of some unique assignments that maybe some people wouldn't think were that great. Internal affairs and special investigations may not be on people's radar.
it's pretty interesting though, isn't it?
Well, it is, and when I went to internal affairs, I was voluntary. A lot of people, it was, hey, you're getting assigned there. But I had a friend of mine, a sergeant that I worked for, that he was a mentor. He wasn't just your boss. He would really help guide your career. And he told me one time, he said, go to internal affairs. He said, as you work your way up, and he said, I know you're going to. I was a patrol officer when he's telling me this. And he says, go to internal affairs. You will learn more about the inner workings of the department than you will anywhere else in the city. And he said that is the best learning experience you'll have, to learn how to manage as a sergeant. Sounded like bad advice to me, but later on, as I got to that point that I could go, I went, and he was dead on right about that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I served 10 terms on the grand jury. So
Right.
each term's 3 months, and we do about 1,500 to 2,000 cases. So I've worked on about 17,000 cases.
Wow.
And in all that experience, you get to meet the people from internal affairs. You get to meet, a lot of people from the Fort Worth Police Department. Always, they did a good job. And, even with the internal affairs, because then they've got to bring, come to the grand jury and say, hey, this is what happened, and,
Right.
we're going to leave it up to the citizens of Tarrant County to determine if we're going to indict this person or not.
Sure. Yeah.
Sometimes you have to do that. And,
Yeah.
but not usually. They do a good job at telling you what happened. So it's not like, they try to coerce you or anything into making a decision. But it's probably kind of gut wrenching sometime, isn't it?
Oh, it absolutely is. And, when you look at, like I said, the patrol stuff is, it's patrol stuff. You go in, you answer your calls, you do your 8 or 10 hour shift. It was 8 when I first started. We went to 10-hour shifts. You take whatever calls show up for you, and there's not much of a, it's just you get what you get. You go over to somewhere like internal affairs, and another piece of advice I got from another sergeant when I was going to transfer, she said, let me tell you something, Winky. She said, the crazier it sounds, the more likely it is to be true. She goes, just remember that when you walk in that door, because you're going to just be floored by the things you hear. And she had been in internal affairs, and she said, and I found that the just more out there, she goes, jaw dropping, and you're going to go, can't believe it, but that actually happened. And she wasn't wrong about that. I mean, some of the craziest stuff, and you never know what's going to come in. And what you're there for is to ensure that the city that's served by the police officers and the police department can have some confidence that if somebody actually does cross the line, that you'll investigate it fairly, honestly, and let the chief and the upper management make decisions that need to be made. And yeah, we had one that came in that my partner and I, we go in for this interview, and this person's telling the story, and we're just looking sideways glances at each other, just going, this is, taking notes. And so I left the room, which you typically don't do in an interview, just because I got to go try to verify at least something of this. And so I get on the computer, start pulling up information, and this girl is dead on accurate about where this police car was, where it traveled to. I mean, it was down to everything. And, the call that this person was on. And I went back, and I didn't say anything. I showed it to the other officer, the sergeant that was in there, and his eyes, he kind of jumped a little bit, and it was all true and got worse as we went. Ultimately, yeah, it ended up in that person being charged with a crime, and kind of rightly so. But again, if you can't confidently and honestly go work these investigations and assure the public that when you've got a bad officer in there, that we're going to move on and do the right thing. And I've always felt that the Fort Worth Police Department, I was proud of that at my time in IED and from what I saw all the way through the rest of my career, they did the right thing. So that's my pitch for the Fort Worth PD.
On all the TV shows, all the other cops hate the internal affairs. Is that true, or is that just TV?
So I will say this: you better have all the friends that you want in the department when you get there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah, because you're not going to make any new ones really. And I would say this for police officers. So if I'm driving down the highway, if I was still a police officer, and you have a DPS trooper come up behind you and hit their lights, you're like, damn it, what did I do? Mm-hmm. It's not any more comfortable for an officer to get called in. It's the same kind of thing where an officer gets called into IED, and it's like, but if they know that you're honest about the work that you do,
Yeah, then it shouldn't be a problem.
then it shouldn't be a problem. And, we had when I was in internal affairs, we had some significantly, major events occur. And, some officers, one of them specifically that I see him all the time, he's come up to me several times and said, man, he goes, if you hadn't have been there that day, he goes, I'm not sure I'd still be a cop. And because another IED sergeant was trying to run over him, quite frankly. Mm-hmm. And we stepped out, and I explained to the other sergeant kind of what he was doing, and went back in and said, okay, let's hit the reset button and unring that bell. Let's start this whole thing over the way our policies say. And, so as an example of, you can be friends to officers just by doing the right thing. You're not changing rules or bending policy to benefit them. You're reading the policy the way it is and just going, look, this is, it's okay that we're doing it this way. And, and that was where the offshoot of IAD became special investigations. And a lot of people are really kind of I think at this point may not know why we started that unit, but essentially our internal affairs unit was violating the rights of officers. When we had a criminal investigation that would come in, we would do the investigation, criminal and the internal affairs investigation in the same office. And you can't cross those lines. A criminal investigator can give all of their information to an internal affairs investigator. An internal affairs investigator can give nothing back to the criminal investigator. Well, you're sitting across the room from the guy doing the cross investigation, and there are times you'd have to get up and walk out of the room because they were making a phone call. And you're like, okay, I can't listen, I can't hear any of this, I need to get out. We would have to kind of create our own barricades to these investigations. So to counter that, and I had gone all over the country, different trainings, and talking to different departments and hearing what they did, and then I would explain what we were doing, and they would just shake their heads, and they're like, are you kidding me? I said, no, that's what we do. So incoming new chief Jeff Halstead, when he came in, one of the things he went around everywhere and he asked everybody, what do you need from me to be successful here in the department? And I said, well, we need to consider splitting this up and having a special investigation, or some sort of unit that does these criminal investigations separate from internal affairs. And this had the support of both the police association and the CLEAT attorneys, the union attorneys that we do this. They knew the perils of what we were doing and how close we were to violating officers' rights in the way we were operating. And so kind of explained that to then I think he had been in the office 2 weeks, chief, and he called the next day and he says, I've kind of chewed on it overnight and I think it's a good idea and I want you to do it. And I was like, wait a minute, I just said you need to do this. I didn't. And he laughed and he said, no, I think that I need you, want to get this started. And so we did. And it, like I said, it effectively split those investigations up where you didn't have the contamination or potential contamination of a criminal investigation and an internal investigation happening at the same time. I stayed there, like I said, I think about 3 years, and went to the major case unit where you served on the grand jury. You saw our major case unit delivering, volumes of information about officer-involved shootings, but we were doing the same thing there that we were doing in internal affairs, and we were stepping on officers' rights in that we were doing a full bore administrative investigation, and then we would ask officers to come in and we would say, okay, now we want you to sign away your rights and we want to turn over everything that we ordered you to tell us in this investigation. We're going to give it to the grand jury. And so that's another. I talked to officers from all over the country and they were astounded that we were doing that. So again, with the blessing of the police association and the CLEAT attorneys, it changed, because essentially you're doing a criminal investigation. When an officer kills somebody, it justified, 100% justified, by the technicality of the law, it's still considered a crime. And the way it's written, the way, everybody makes a big deal. Oh my gosh, the coroner's office, says it's a murder. Of course it is. That's what it legally is.
Yeah.
So anyway, we would force officers to talk to us during these investigations, and then again, we would take those and turn them over to the grand jury. And so we changed it to where we would allow actually for the officers to have a lawyer present while they were being questioned about, an event. And then they would have a review. They had their Fifth Amendment rights. I mean, everything was afforded them that wasn't for the entirety of my career before that. Mm-hmm. And so we changed a lot of things, and I think it improved the department in the way they operated and also the way that the officers were protected. And, to have the backing of both the Police Association and CLEAT 2 different times saying, yeah, we think this is a really good idea for you guys to change the way you operate. You can't ever get anybody to agree on anything 100%, but they were all in. So anyway, those are the changes that we made to the department while I was over those units. And, I hope that officers benefited from that. I think they did.
When there's an officer involved shooting and it's a death, how long is that officer? I mean, it could be months or years before the investigation's done. Is he on desk duty or? does he immediately go back to work or?
They can. It was, you have that standard, and you often hear that in the press also of the, well, they're on, we're going to give them off, 3 days off or blank days off,
Right.
and so typically that's actually for their mental health to
Right,
ensure
yeah.
that they're physically and emotionally capable and ready to come back to work. There is no hard and fast rule as far as the investigation goes in terms of how long you're going to have somebody off. And to my good fortune, when I was in the major case unit, I didn't have there. We had one shooting that the circumstances were unusual. The officers were correct in what they did, and I think we kept them off a little while longer just because of the press that was going on surrounding it. But typically it's 3 days to 7 days, but I know it's based on, again, the officer's well-being and the care for them rather than the investigation. Most of the investigations can be done in probably 60 to 90 days and forwarded over to the grand jury or works its way up through the department and then over to the grand jury. Some are more complicated, but the thing that I think people kind of don't understand, they see the detective shows and they see these different things about internal type investigations, officer-involved shootings. It's not a whodunit. We're not looking for a bad guy 99% of the time unless an officer was killed by somebody that, unknown to us. But it's a reconstruction of events is what it is. And so you want to be founded in science and fact as you reconstruct what occurred. And there may be sometimes you've got to go back and revisit the events, the officers, the scenes. But like I said, 60 to 90 days would not be unheard of to complete officer-involved shooting. Just one that I would call fairly uncomplicated. Some of them, Garrett Hull's death, I think, some of the circumstances surrounding it took longer. But so it was also when Garrett died, it had been 12 years prior to that from another officer dying. And actually, Hank Novel was the last one, and it was 5 years.
As far as the shooting goes?
Yeah,
or,
yeah.
Frito was in
Frito
there.
was
So
in there
Frito-
between
yeah,
there,
so
but
you had-
that was a vehicular
Right, yeah, so
homicide.
you had 3 officers. So in 2005, Hank died. He was shot, serving a warrant. And then almost 1 year and about 2 weeks later, Dwayne Frito died. He was on a traffic stop out on I-35 and got hit by a drunk driver and died. And then you had this split in time of 13 years between Frito and Garrett passing away.
one question and I'm done. Dean, the Aaron Dean trial, I'm not trying to get, was he off or was he still active duty in between the time of the shooting, the death of Tatiana?
No, and
He
that
quit, right?
well, I think he resigned, and/or it was knew he was going to be fired, resigned. I don't know all the details of exactly what he did or didn't do prior to it. I think he was going to get fired regardless.
Yeah, so that's all I need.
Yeah, preemptive if he resigned, but I don't know for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the last job that you had
Mm-hmm.
was in the tactical intelligence. Is that what it's
Right.
called?
Yeah. So it was
And
over.
that compromised. There's a whole lot of stuff that does.
Yeah.
The mayor's detail.
Right. Yeah. So
Events.
Tactical Intelligence Unit has the Intel team, which is where Garrett Hull was assigned, and it's called the Ghost Unit now. The Mayor's Protection Detail, Electronic Surveillance Unit, Homeland Security. I think there was something else. We had what we called our CTU team, and it was something we started there also, which was a uniformed in-car tactical team that was attached to the Intel unit. Sometimes it was hard for them. They'd be out on calls and details and things, and patrol was so busy they couldn't just grab somebody to respond as a uniformed in vehicle presence. So we started a team to work that assignment also. So quite a bit of different assignments as a lieutenant over that unit.
And part of that was the event team or whatever that does
So,
the events, or is that a different?
That
group?
was kind of separate. So the things that I did with it was an off-duty job that I had at the convention center where I was in charge of the special events security there.
Okay.
Yeah, so that was an extra gig. Yeah.
Yeah, I've got a person I know that really enjoyed doing the trade show down there with all the sporting goods and stuff.
Yeah. So that's every officer's favorite show every year. And it's
There's a lot of officers take off for vacation during that.
yeah, they
week.
do. Yeah. Yeah. When I took over as the lieutenant over that, I had that's when I remade a lot of good friends. So it was a trade show. They'd come in twice and sometimes 3 times a year, but they would fill the entire convention center with nothing but sporting goods and equipment and gear. And yeah, I got a lot of texts and phone calls during those weeks for sure.
And whenever they closed down, they didn't want to ship everything back.
Right.
So
Right.
there were some good deals made.
Yeah, there
I'll
were.
bet you there
yeah,
were.
yeah. And my kayak is one of those good deals.
But the Ed Bach, we were at his retirement the other night. Now that's the unit that takes care of like Texas Motor Speedway, TCU football games and things like that.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
So it's the special event response. What Ed was over for, I think about 6 years, somewhere around there. If there's a special event in Fort Worth, Texas, they deal with all the security, logistics, planning, permitting. I mean, everything. It goes through a lot of different areas in the city, but Ed was in charge essentially of everything, all the way down to even the COVID response for the entire city of Fort Worth. Planned and executed that. Hurricane Harvey relief. I think he went actually down to Houston for that, where there were several of us here in Fort Worth. Myself, another lieutenant, Keenum, trying to remember who the third one was, but we had all the evacuation locations,
Yeah.
and we turned the convention center over in about 2 days into an evac center. Yeah.
Yeah, Amy Bechtel, is it?
Amy Bethel, yeah.
Bethel, yeah. I didn't really know. I knew her, but I really didn't know what she did until we had the Armed Forces Bowl game.
Right.
And so I went to this meeting several days before to go through a second by second deal of the game, and they had all the players there. And here's Amy and some other police officers, because they had to get. They have a command center down
Right.
there and stuff, because they have to take care of the crowd, take care of the traffic, and everything else. So
Yeah.
there's a lot to that. You don't
Mhm.
think about all the workings behind the scene that they do. So,
Well, yeah, it's quite a bit. And I mean, even so for our 5K run that we're working on, I mean, you start your permitting process 6 months in advance to ensure that all that, goes through and then,
permitting and insurance,
Right.
and
Yeah.
vendors, and
in the number of emails, because the bureaucracy works how bureaucracy works. So you're going to get a question back from somebody that kind of it'll put the brakes on the process sometimes as you're trying to get these permits and plan things, that somebody will just ask one question that maybe you didn't think about, or that, we had one that we went, that doesn't actually apply to this run. It would apply to it if we were doing it this way. And so, but it stops it for 3 or 4 days at a time. So yeah, I mean, keeping up with that is not an easy task.
it's not something you do 2 weeks before. Say,
Oh, no, not at all. Yeah.
You better plan ahead.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. And Ed was, what would be the right word? He was kind of a master at it. I mean, he's a thinker and very calm about the way he operates with everything. And again, they're going to miss him a lot. But the new sergeant, Ryan Stepp, that is taking over, really, I guess,
I was
essentially.
talking to him. He said, that he hadn't been on the email loop,
Right.
and all of a sudden he's having to play catch up because he doesn't know all the events, because he hadn't been getting all those emails that Ed had been.
Right.
So
Yeah, so I guess yesterday was officially his first day in the saddle, and he's got some shoes to fill, but he's a pretty capable guy also. I think he'll do a really good job, and he'll be out at a run too.
yeah.
Yeah,
There's a lot of events that go on.
I think
Oh,
I
my
think that's the
goodness.
thing that you don't realize until you start seeing the emails,
Yeah.
how many events there are in Fort Worth.
I mean, just to that point, just runs alone almost every single weekend. Somewhere in Fort Worth, there's a 5K, 10K, whatever going on. I mean, it's insane the number
Yep.
of things that go on.
Absolutely.
And so you worked with the Department of Homeland Security, you interfaced with them too on some things?
So we had our own Homeland Security unit, and you know, I had the good fortune of, and I'll say this, when I went to the intelligence unit, I mean, everybody knew I was retiring, and I mean, my date was picked, and
So you didn't just take one of those little gravy jobs they've got that some retirees do? I mean, there's some jobs where, you know, whenever they start to go out to pasture, they kind of
sure
slow up.
Well, no, and honestly,
that seems like that wasn't one of those jobs.
No, it definitely wasn't. And to be honest, I mean, I kind of thought I was in that final job over in the West Division as the lieutenant over the detectives unit and the NPOs and, you know, doing the administrative work. And, you know, at that point, and I'll say this, you know, police work is kind of a young person's game. I mean, especially being a patrol. Now, granted, you've got some officers that, you know, I mean, they start their career there and they end their career there, you know, and so 30 years, they're officers on the street, and you need that. But, and when I say it's a young person's game, as you get older, I mean, you learn a lot, but your body also, you know, starts sending you messages.
Not quite as fast a runner
No.
as you used to be.
Yeah, no, not at all.
Well, Ed Krause did pretty good when he chased that guy and jumped that fence and tackled him.
Yeah. Well, you still have it in you. Every once in a while, you can do that.
Adrenaline.
And, yeah, absolutely, adrenaline. Or your mind sends you the message and says, "You're still in uniform. You're still a cop. Go chase somebody."
It's a reaction,
yeah, and it's a reaction.
built in.
Yeah, it really is built in, and you know, it's so. Again, I don't know. You know, I kind of look back and go, I don't know that I should have been chosen for that job as the intel lieutenant when I was, because I was leaving. They kind of knew I was a rental, more or less. But I had the good fortune to get selected for the job, and I'm thankful that I did, you know, for the opportunities it gave me. And then, you know, there are occasions that I look back and, you know, then go, you know, maybe I was the perfect pick for the job because of some of the other things that happened, that somebody with my experience and things I'd been through with other officers that had been killed in the line of duty, that maybe it gave me a little more insight into getting through that last 3 months after Garrett died. Yeah.
So you were his lieutenant.
Yeah, I was Garrett's lieutenant. So, and for everybody that's, you know, doesn't know, I refer to people by their first name. So Garrett Hull was one of the officers that worked in the intel unit. And they had been chasing a group of serial robbers. It was in 2018, the summer of 2018, and they were robbing bars, individuals, and mostly targeting Hispanics over in kind of the south and southeast side of Fort Worth, and in Hispanic bars. And actually Garrett was the one that through a lot of research and investigation figured out there was a kind of a unique looking vehicle that was being used. If I remember, it was a red Tahoe. And Garrett finally figured out, you know, through some surveillance tapes, he identified the Tahoe and then figured out who the bad guys were. So they started targeting these individuals they had found to be suspects in this and identified them, and set up a detail. And it was kind of interesting, the weekend that this happened was also a week that, and I don't remember which motorcycle gang it was, but there was a motorcycle gang that had decided that they were going to invade Fort Worth also, up on the north side. And I mean, they pretty much announced their plans. Hey, we're coming, and we're coming to take over Fort Worth. We're going to make this kind of one of our base of operations. So you had that event going that was going to take a significant amount of resources to deal with, and then we still had this serial robbers that were getting more brazen, more dangerous, had taken some shots at people, and
They just come in the bars and
yeah, it was
rob
takeovers.
everybody.
Yeah, they were doing bar takeovers, and so they planned an operation on September 13th. To surveil and you know, attempt to arrest these group of bandits. And so I had gotten pulled two different directions, and I had actually gotten pulled over on the motorcycle gang side of the briefings and trying to work on that. And I remember as I was leaving the briefing, the motorcycle gang briefing was on the front side of the room, and then my team, the intel team, was on the back side doing their planning for that night's operation. And one of the things I vividly remember is the acting sergeant over the unit at that time. You know, he looked at it, I was like, you know, how are things going? We talked a little bit about it, and he goes, I got to be honest with you. He goes, I fear that we're going to get in a gunfight tonight. He goes, these are just bad people. He said, you know, I know that we're ready, but the team, he goes, you know, I have that gut feeling this is, you know, they're not going to just give up. And so for me, that was, you know, we talked a little bit more into my work day. You know, I went home, and in that position, the lieutenants sometimes go out on these operations, but not often, you know, in the position that I was in. And then that night, it was around 10 o'clock, somewhere in that range. You know, I get a phone call, and it was the acting sergeant, and he says, LT, we've been in a gunfight, and we got one down.
I mean, that was like when it happened. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
It wasn't like, hey, you know.
No, it
Like
was.
an hour or two
He wasn't
later,
reporting.
right?
I mean,
No, it was, I
on
mean,
the ground, and
yeah, I mean,
it
he
happened.
called me, he says, we've been in a gunfight, and I'd gotten a lot of calls. You know, I get surprised at still, sometimes I think, okay, you can power through this. But my wife had gotten used to me getting called out because I'd been on call for years, and I didn't ask for a location that I remember, and maybe I did. You know what I did? I said, where are you at? And he said, Hemp Hill and Biddison. Okay, that's all I needed. I knew I'd be able to find the officers. Jumped up, got in bed, or got dressed, and was out the door. And I remember on my way, and something we talked about earlier, it never occurred to me that somebody might have died, because we'd gone from 2005 to that minute, and we had officers that were in horrific shootings. Matt Pierce for one of them. I mean, the guy was shot,
man.
8 times? Quite frankly, should not have survived. He'll tell you that, but his will to live, you know, and you defeated that and lived through it. You know, I'd seen other officers that have been shot. None of them died. Officers weren't dying because the medical care, I mean, everything that was going on. So as I'm going there, it didn't, you know, it just never really kind of caught me until I got there. And I got there fast enough, like you said, pretty contemporaneous phone call. When they got in the gunfight, the sergeant called me. And, you know, I didn't live very far away, so it didn't take me a ton of time to get there. It was still an active scene, and they were getting ready to create a new search team because one of the people was still hiding in a house, hadn't given up yet. And so I didn't actually know that when I got there. And so, you know, I pulled in on the perimeter and started kind of getting my stuff together. And I'm listening to the radio and hearing them, and one of the officers that was a corporal on the team saying, okay, you know, set up this line, y'all go. And I'm like, I looked over at somebody, I said, is this still going? And they went, yeah, we got one outstanding suspect still. And it's like, I had no idea. But then again, it was a quick phone call, give me the basic details that I need and let me get there. Once that final suspect was in custody, and I could make my way in, you know, officers were giving me details of what happened, and you know, the moment kind of hit you that you're leaning towards this is really bad, and you know, the officers had pulled Garrett after this gunfight. Other officers killed the suspect that had shot Garrett, and you know, some officers pulled up a patrol car. They knew it was bad. One of his teammates, and I hope Ryan doesn't mind me saying his name on this, Ryan Navarro, who was a medic in the military, grabbed Garrett. They pulled him in the back seat of a patrol car, and Ryan started caring for him, and they drove him to the hospital in a police car and got him there as quick as they could. You know, Garrett was shot in the head, and you know, it was not a survivable wound. And you know, we all gathered at the hospital like officers do, and we filled that place in support of the family and all the officers that were there. And Garrett died the next day. Big thing, one of the big takeaways is he was an organ donor. This is one of the most amazing things you'll ever hear. Garrett was a huge man. I mean, he was a big dude. And we went the next day, the team went back and went out in the courtyard, and it's kind of this organ donor's courtyard. They release balloons when this person passes their gift to other people. And we find out later on, and this is no joke, they said that, Garrett's heart, his organs went to several people and saved their lives. Garrett was, like I said, a big dude. His heart was too big to give to someone else.
Wow.
And they couldn't donate his heart. But again, he saved the lives of quite a few people. Not only the night that he stepped in front of that bad guy to save other people, to save officers, to put himself in between harm's way and others, but also afterwards, he kept on. So for everybody that wonders, when I keep saying Garrett, it's Garrett Hull. He was an officer that worked on my team. Yeah.
And that's how we got together.
That's how we got together. So it's the blur of the weeks after Garrett died. You had a group of officers, in particular, and I've told this story. Anthony White doesn't mind me telling his name. Was a friend of.
He's a good guy.
Yeah,
I
great
like him.
guy. Works on the Assist the Officer Foundation, so and some others that help families of officers. But he also lived in the neighborhood where Garrett lived, so he was a family friend. So Anthony was running interference essentially for the family, is what I'd call it, for lack of a better term, because there are some people that would take advantage of a family in that situation and make offers and scams. And so I'd gone down to drop paperwork off at Anthony's office, which is where the major case office was. And we passed each other, and he says, hey, let me talk to you for a minute outside. He said, I want to run some phone calls by you that we've been getting about Garrett's family and different stuff. I said, all right. So we went back out in the foyer and started talking, and he goes, well, I got, a phone call from this place that, says they want to do this. And he goes, man, you wouldn't believe one of them I got. He said, guy sounded like a mob boss out of Brooklyn. He says, we're going to pay off the family's mortgage, send us all their information, blah, blah, blah. And he says, I'd kind of tossed that one. And I went, and he kind of mentioned the name, during the conversation. I went, did you say that was Siller? And he went, yeah. And I said, well, that's the Tunnel to Towers Foundation. You need to call them back. And he went, are you joking with me? And I said, no, I'm not actually. I said, I ran in one of their 5K runs a few years ago, and I said, that's a legit organization. I mean, that's what they do, is they pay off mortgages for officers killed in the line of duty, or, offer financial assistance. And Anthony, he kind of looked at me, and he was like, you're actually being serious about this, right? And I said, Anthony, I'm telling you, I'm not kidding. You call them back. And he goes, Winky, he goes, we got about 1,600 officers in this department. And he goes, everybody's coming in and out. And he goes, but I grabbed you. And he goes, but I grabbed you and you know about this organization. And he goes, what are the chances that I could have grabbed anybody and they would have gone, yeah, that sounds stupid. Don't call that guy. He goes, but I got you and you actually know about him. I said, well, maybe it's not a coincidence, right?
Nope. It's a God thing.
Yeah, it is. And and those things have continued to happen, those kind of coincidences. And Rick and I talked about this. Teresa Nava, Hank Nava's wife, she calls them God winks. And I think it's an acknowledgement that maybe not everybody, or whatever God you believe in, or whatever fate or coincidence, but she says they're God winks, that somebody's smiling on you, just saying, maybe this isn't actually in your control. Let me guide this, down that path for you. So that was one of them. So 6 weeks later, the Siller family, there was a golf tournament that was already scheduled. The Siller family came and they gave a check to Sabrina Hall and paid off the mortgage to their home that they had not been in for a terribly long time when Garrett died. And ultimately the organization, I mean, it's kind of a fourfold now, and we can talk more about the story, but it's assisting first responders, fire and police, EMS also, killed in the line of duty under extraordinary circumstances, if they have a mortgage and children at home under the age of 18. And I don't want to suggest that they may not make an exception if your kids are all in college, but in those kind of conditions, their goal is to pay off the mortgage of that family's home. So kind of the biggest financial burden that they may face during an event like that, or, during that life-altering event, that they don't have to worry about losing their house. That's the one thing that they know they can go home to all the time. And so they paid off the house for the whole family. So in May of 2019, so I retired in January 1, 2019. So May 2019, I'll fast forward again, Sabrina, and I don't know if it's a movement, a foundation, or what you want to call it, but anyhow, it's called Mission 3105, and it's something that Sabrina created for the month of May. So you got the 31 days of May. Garrett, even though he hated the ID number 3105 because that was actually his second ID number in the department, but she said, as a pay to homage to his ID number of the 3105, May and 31, do something nice for somebody. Doesn't matter what it is. If you just grab a shopping cart from somebody in a parking lot, or if you want to buy a lunch for somebody or pay forward something, do it. Let her know what it is, document it, put it out on Facebook, but also acknowledge that this is why we did it, to honor that Mission 3105 and to honor Garrett. And so when I saw her doing that, and I'm looking at this and going, this is 7 months after Garrett's death, and here's Sabrina already starting to push through and create this memory and honor for Garrett. So having run in a Tunnel to Towers 5K that was here in Fort Worth in 2016, they had asked me to be a run director for them then, because I actually fussed at them for calling a Fort Worth run a Dallas run.
Big foul.
Well, it
Big
was.
foul.
So, I sent them an email and said, hey, Dallas is an okay city, but Fort Worth is Fort Worth, and we really like Fort Worth the way we are. And so if you call a Fort Worth run a Dallas run, you're not going to get a whole lot of people showing up for it. So their response was, you seem like you kind of have a good finger on the pulse of this. Would you like to be a run director? At the time, I did have 3 kids in college, and I said, no, I can't do it right now, but I may come revisit this when I retire. So for the Mission 3105 that year, for me, it was my pay forward was to volunteer to become a run director for Tunnel to Towers. And so I contacted the foundation, and you fill out an application with them. And I got called back, and they set up an interview, and it's a fairly lengthy interview process before they say yes
It
to
seems
somebody.
like a really well-run organization.
It is. They do a really good job and keep very tight controls, and understandably giving them kind of money that they are taking in and putting out and ensuring that it goes for the right things. So went through my interview process, and the thing that I was impressed with, it tells you about the stability of the organization. One of the people on my interview, he goes, as we're talking, he goes, you're the guy that emailed me in 2016. And he remembered it. And I said, yeah, I actually am. He started laughing. He goes, you kept your promise. You said you'd be back once you could. And as we talked about it and during the interview process, and, I explained to him and, why I was wanting to join the foundation or, as a volunteer. And they said my story wasn't unique to them. All over the country, and they have about 80 runs, satellite runs over the country of these 5Ks, and they hear this all the time, that it's either a family member, a teammate, a friend, and sometimes it's just the community stepping up and just saying, we lost an officer, we lost a firefighter, and we want to, honor them and honor their memory and come back, and they set these runs up. So the thing that they asked, though, they said, when do you want to do the run? And we'd already talked to a few people that said they would help, and we said, well, we're looking at October, and they kind of balked at it a little bit, and they said, usually, we like to have 6 to 8 months advance notice. So they said, you're talking about, pulling this off in about 3 to 4 months, and can you do it? And we went,
You're the
Yeah,
event
I mean,
guys.
yeah, I mean, I guess, sure.
Yeah,
we
you got
think
the
we
right
think we can.
contacts, you
Yeah,
can get anything done.
yeah.
That's
So so we jumped in, feet first, and worked really hard. And I'll say, and am I allowed to say the shops at Clear Fork and
Yeah.
shout them out? So we were going to do the run at the Police and Fire Memorial, and we had already started the permitting process. And then I went to go do a walkthrough at the park to see what our route was going to be. And the city had just started renovating the park. And so there are barricades. I mean, the roads are torn up. So we had to do a quick pivot on that. And one of the people that was helping us was the security director at Shops at Clear Fork. So I called him up and I said, listen, we're in a kind of a bind here, and our run route's gone. We know y'all have 5K runs at the shops. Is there something that y'all could do to help us out? And he said, let me see. And in 24 hours, maybe not even that long, it was probably later that day, they called back. They said, we're all in. What do we need to do to have this run out here? And so we're going into our fourth physical run, 5th year of the run, because we had a COVID year. Anyway, we're in that planning process now. And like I said, I've jumped around a lot. You know what I mean?
Grows all the time.
Well, yeah.
Every year it's
so,
just,
yeah, we started with, I think the first year we had maybe 125
Yeah, it's pretty
people
normal.
somewhere around
the
there.
First 5K, that's probably
Yeah.
pretty normal.
Yeah,
people got to figure it out, and then there's other races they got to.
Absolutely.
or they're
Yeah.
signed up
Well,
for.
like you had said, there is also, go on any
Yeah.
run sign up, and there's a dozen runs in the Metroplex every weekend. So for us, we were pretty excited. And it's kind of funny, for all the special events I help plan and help work on, but when it's your baby, maybe you feel a little bit differently about it. And also the why, which I've talked about before, is having those whys you do this. We were happy with it, but also immediately when you're done with it, I mean, you're not thinking, oh, well, good, I get a break until January, February next year. I mean, you immediately start
Hit the
thinking,
ground running.
what am I going to do next? So we went from 125-ish to 235. Our 3rd year was a COVID year. So actually, our Fort Worth Police Academy, some people did a virtual run. Our Fort Worth Police Academy represented our run and carried our flag and went out and did a run in honor of Garrett for us that year. And then last year we were up to a little over 600.
Nice.
Yeah, so.
and we have the cadets from the police academy and from
Correct.
the fire academy,
Yeah.
and we have some military groups out there too. The ROTC.
Yeah, ROTC.
Yeah.
So yes, we have a lot
the
of
mayor,
representation.
The mayor, city council.
Mayor,
there's
city
a lot of-
council. Hoping they'll all come again. I know the police academy is in. TCU's ROTC emailed us back a couple of days ago, said they're going to come out. We sent invitations out to the Fort Worth ISD ROTC. I think it'd be a nice event for this young group of people to get involved in and kind of be around in a community that embraces them, and also as they kind of look to grow in service and look forward to possible military service. I think it'd be an important event for them. And the fire may not have an academy class, but I know Fort Worth Fire Department always comes out and represents well.
Brings a big
for those.
flag too.
Raise the big flag. Their firefighters come out and they run full bunker gear.
And your son's a firefighter.
Yeah, my middle child, youngest son, is a firefighter here in Fort Worth. Comes out and runs in the bunker gear. I'll sing his praises a little bit. So our first run, he was the first place runner in our very first run. He wasn't a firefighter then, and he also was the fastest firefighter last year in our run. And so it's what we want to do and what we hope to do, and maybe through this and other avenues, is we want other cities to come out also, because I'll kind of hold up my list that I've got here. I keep this as a reminder that it's not just about Fort Worth. I've got a list of all the cities and counties in Texas that Tunnel to Towers has been to and paid off a home, a mortgage for an officer, sheriff's deputy, DPS trooper, border patrol agent.
Even Terry Burgess, his son Brian, Brian's widow,
Right, right.
they gave her a home
Right.
in San Diego.
So she's a Gold Star
Yeah, Gold Star
Home.
Widow.
and a Gold Star Widow, and that's one of the others. So I didn't finish what Tunnel to Towers kind of is about, and I don't know if we're
Yeah,
short
about
on.
just a couple of minutes.
All right, a
so.
couple of minutes, so I'll do this fast. So Tunnel to Towers started at post 9/11. The Siller family, their youngest brother, Stephen Siller, was a firefighter in New York City. Was off duty the day the towers were attacked, and was actually going to meet his brothers to play golf, and called his wife and said, "Look, you know what's going on. I got to go to work." But he went back to his station house. They were already out, so he grabbed all of his gear, loaded it up in his truck, and started driving towards the towers. At the Brooklyn Battery tunnel, all the traffic was cut off there, and the officers even told him, some had recalled this, jump on a fire truck. That's emergency vehicles can come through. He said no, he wanted to get to his team. He threw on all of his gear, which, when you load up, you're talking about 70, 80 pounds of full gear, and he ran the final distance through the Brooklyn Battery tunnel down to the Twin Towers and joined his squad there, and everyone in his squad was killed that day.
Wow.
And so the family, started getting phone calls and hearing about the events, and was told everyone died. It's interesting right now. There's God winks. So
Right,
there's
right.
a Tunnel to Towers
Yeah, they're on all
commercial
the time.
on
Yeah.
Fox News
How
right
ironic is
now.
that? Here
Yeah,
we're talking about them. when
right,
there's-
and there they are. So
But Fox runs a tremendous number of their
they do,
commercials.
and
They're
there's
super supportive.
Steven Siller.
Right.
They're showing pictures right now, and
We're watching the TV on the wall.
yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, they
That's that.
oh, okay.
Have you ever seen
Gotcha.
that?
I haven't. So the family, once they heard about what their brother had done, they said, we've got to do something to help these families. We're not the only one that's had this tremendous loss. Somebody brought up the idea. They said, well, he basically ran a 5K run to get through the Brooklyn Battery tunnels down to the Twin Towers. Why don't we start a 5K run? And then the idea evolved to, well, let's just follow his footsteps. So the actual foundation, when you look at some of the shirts that we've got, it says following in the footsteps, and they literally mean it. They have a 5K run.
You made that run.
Yeah, I did. So in 21, my wife and I went to New York City, and we ran in that 5K run. You got to understand, 30,000 people show up for that.
Yeah, you're not running a
Yeah.
lot.
So for a 5K run, there's the jackrabbits get to go up front.
Right.
I was in corral like M, and you're waiting an hour before your corral gets through. They run it like it's a marathon. It's a 5K run.
Right.
But when you come through the Brooklyn Battery Tunnel, you're met right at the edge of it, and it is lined with police officers, firefighters, military service members, and they're holding a big silk poster of every firefighter, police officer killed in the line of duty the day that occurred. As the last runner goes through there, they then form up, and they have a formation march from the end of the Brooklyn Battery Tunnel all the way down to the Twin Towers,
Wow.
and it's led by the bagpipers. And I'm telling you, there is, there's things I get emotional about. You've seen me already this morning, but you can't cross once you cross over that line and you see all those people, and you start realizing, you're putting faces and names with these people that died, and seeing that, it's quite emotional. So as the family, as this run kept getting bigger, they wanted to expand who they were helping, not just the officers killed there that day. They said, God, you've got military service members, you've got wars that have spun up out of this, and we've got service members being killed and coming back home, both killed in action and catastrophically injured. We want to help them as well. So they have the Gold Star Family Home program, which nationwide, I sat down and counted last night, they've provided homes for 218 widows or widowers of combat soldiers killed in action. In Texas alone, so they also built smart homes for catastrophically injured service members, and that's something unique in itself because of what you're doing to give these service members an opportunity to live a life in a home that allows them the freedom to just function daily. And so I know 8 smart homes have been built in Texas, probably more than that, but that was the count I had. several of the smart home recipients. I know one, Jace Wheeler, that ran with us
Yeah.
last year, came to our
I've
run
got some
last year.
pictures that we
Sure,
had
we got
pulled up
pictures and
with him.
video. He and I text or email last night. They're coming. We've been contacted by a family, Smith County deputy that was actually the 1 year anniversary of his death was this past Saturday. We think his family may join us this year. We hope that they do. But like I said, I keep this list. I look at it, and it is all the officers, all the cities, all the counties in Texas that I know officers' families have been assisted by Tunnel to Towers. It's 31 of them total that have either had a mortgage payoff or in Dallas, the 5 officers that were killed on 7/6, the foundation assisted them financially because not everybody met that mortgage criteria. So, when you look at that event, that's another one where they came in and assisted. But Dallas, they've assisted 7 families there. I emailed Chief Garcia a couple of days ago asking, just extending the invitation to have Dallas PD come join us also. But, close by, Dallas, Grand Prairie, Mesquite, those are the ones that are Denton County, actually, Haltom City, where Tunnel to Towers Fort Worth has paid the mortgages or financially assisted officers' families. We extend that invitation to all of them. We want you to come to our run.
And when is the run?
So the run is October 14th this year, and it's 8 o'clock in the morning. Shops at Clear Fork.
Is there a flyer?
Yeah,
And we'll post it too.
And the thing with the 5K is people go, well, I can't run 3.1 miles. And I'm like, well, you know what? I'll bet you can walk 3.1. And October 14th, you could start training now by just walking and then start doing some walk runs. And then if you want to run, then run. But you can walk, you can shuffle. 3.1 miles, you'll be surprised, and especially with when you think about what you're doing and why you're doing it. 3.1 miles goes like that.
it really does. So, and that's where the bookends to the first run to that point. So my son that was the first place runner in the first run, he was always a good athlete, and so it was a fun surprise to see him running across. But the bookend of that was my 78-year-old mother on that day, and it was her birthday that day. And she had 2 knee replacements, and she started and finished that run and was last place. Mm-hmm. She was the slowest runner that day.
And you know what?
First
We always
and the
cheer
last.
the last place. So, I'm a little older now, so 63. I don't run as fast as I used to. I'm not like winning races.
Yeah.
In fact, I haven't run a race in quite a while because I get injured and then I have to start all over again. But if you're out there and you're listening and you want to get a program going and you don't know how to start, then catch me at info@roll-call.org and I will help you because between being a personal trainer and help coaching people and running and everything else, I'm happy to help. I think that I don't know. I love to run so much that when I can't run, I cry. So it's been really hard for me to have to go through a lot of these injuries and getting older. But it's just one of those things that you do that benefits you, and it can benefit somebody else by being a part of this.
Benefit the community.
And you don't have to run. You could walk.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter.
Well,
And you can be a sponsor.
yeah, and you can be a sponsor.
You could sponsor a team. Let's
Yeah,
say that maybe you want to sponsor 15 military people or 15 police people. They could do that, couldn't
Yeah,
they?
yeah. You can sponsor a team. Just make donations, tunneltotowers.org, and then go find the Fort Worth Run. And you can a lot of different ways to support. But one of the reasons that we pick the route that we do, it's a pretty flat route, and we do that because we do have wheelchair-bound participants that we want to give them an opportunity to have a enjoyable day with us. And so it's
Is it on the Trinity?
It's on the Trinity
Yep,
Trail.
yep. And they've paved so much of that
Yeah.
that you can go like the whole way.
Yeah,
almost without-
and Rick
and out and back.
out and back, and Rick photographs it and rides the golf carts along the way, and so he sees the excitement
carts,
and
don't run.
the energy that's brought. And the big thing for us is on that day we want to honor those that have given their lives for our country, for our city. Garrett Hull, Hank Nava, Dwayne Frito, those all guys, those were my contemporaries. All were killed in the line of duty from the time I was a sergeant. I mean, there were quite a few more, and I'm not saying there weren't, but, and Garrett was the most impactful. We want to honor them. We want to celebrate them. We want those first responders that come out to know and understand that they're surrounded by a community that really cares about them and supports them, and they get to see that. And then for the citizens, for the civilians that come out, it also just gives them an opportunity to maybe have an interaction with the police officers, firefighters that maybe they not otherwise wouldn't have. And then also bring your kids with you. I mean, you look at our website.
It's a really patriotic thing too.
It is.
Kid-friendly,
It is,
patriotic, and like I said, it's very meaningful for all of us that go out there. And we give trophies also for the fastest firefighter, fastest police officer, fastest military service member. So if you're one of those and want to
Fastest
come out,
veteran?
well,
that can be
you fall into that. Military service member. It doesn't necessarily have to be current.
Well,
so,
we need the Air Force to come out and show up.
Yeah.
Got some fast
the
runners
Navy
out there
too. The
nowadays.
skipper needs to come
The
out there.
skipper definitely needs to come out. He runs.
Yeah.
We thank you for being here. I have
Well,
to
sure.
give a shout out to Bill Haddad
Yeah.
and Alan Pennington because
Yeah.
those two guys are the guys that got me involved. So
Yeah, for sure. And that was Alan, as your MPO, and and that was one of those. He's one of those core guys that started out helping us originally, and just sent me a text one day, and he says, "Hey, do you have a photographer?" It's like, my daughter, maybe. I don't know for sure, but we're going to grab somebody. He says, "I know a guy." and
I'm Alan's guy.
besides our run, at Brotherhood for the Fallen, at all these different events, and I'm trying to get involved with Heroes on the Water now. I mean, we seem to cross paths a lot, but like I said, you had mentioned this before. Rick is tireless in his commitment to these nonprofits, to these organizations that support police, fire, military, and everybody. He's
been
grateful.
fun.
Well, your talents don't go unnoticed.
thank you.
Right.
Yeah.
And if you're retired like us, you're busier now than you were
There's no doubt.
before you retired.
No doubt.
And you were probably surprised when you came to Fort Worth Memories Museum and saw that Larry's got really a tribute wall to
Yeah.
Garrett.
This is the shells from the 21 gun salute.
Right.
His wife gave them to me,
Yeah.
Sabrina.
Yeah. So.
I'd never even seen one of those.
Can you get that on camera?
See if I'm holding this up the right way for you guys.
Yeah. We got another
You can see
camera
right
crew back
there.
there. But
Yeah.
That's very special.
Yeah.
Oh,
It is.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
more than very special.
Yeah, no doubt. And that, it's fun to be here. And when I looked up and see posters of different things that, I know or I have a video of, and we've talked about some of the other things that are here. And, and I'll say this, because I don't know who that firefighter picture is back there.
That's the 16th
Fire
one
chief?
that was a volunteer.
So, my side of the family, a lot of military service, one DPS trooper, and then me as a police officer. My wife's side of the family, Henry Lee Payne was a firefighter here in Fort Worth and was killed in the line of duty. And this was my wife's, he would have been great uncle at University in Park Hill, and his ladder truck was going around the corner and it hit the curb and threw him off of it. So, going back to 1932, we've got family here on both sides that in public service, or that one killed in the line of duty as a firefighter here.
Goodness.
Yeah. So, it's something that is a big part of who I am, of who my kids are. My oldest son is a prosecutor in McLennan County, and so I just, it's something we want to pass on to people that come to our run, and just people that we associate with. And like I said, saying thanks to all of those that grinded out with us and put up with me, these runs. Now, I'm not the run director anymore. Ed Bach is now the run director, and I do sponsorship donations. So now you got to put up with Ed instead of me.
I got a new boss.
Yeah,
New
got a new
boss.
boss. Yeah.
There you go.
So the run is Saturday, October the 14th
Yep.
at the shops at Clear Fork.
Shops at Clear Fork, going to start
And-
at 8 a.m.
And how can there's Facebook page?
Yeah,
Or
Facebook page, Instagram page.
Probably go to Tunnel of Towers website site and
You
find
go-
a place.
Yep,
too.
go to
Okay.
tunneltotowers.org and you go to get involved, and then it'll have a list of all the 5K runs. And ours is one of the last ones, so you've got to scroll down quite a ways, but you'll find the Fort Worth Run. You can sign up there, you can donate there, you can also join as a sponsor there. And like I said, I know we're almost out of time. I'll say this, that, you know, for us, besides just having people come out and learn about Tunnel to Towers and expanding the amount of people coming to the run, our goal is to earn money for the foundation. We want to help other families. And
Just like they helped Garrett.
yeah, just exactly like they
Sabrina
helped
and the
Garrett,
children.
Sabrina, and like I said, this list of people that I carry with me all the time. The foundation sets a $20,000 goal for fundraising for each one of the runs, and one of our helpers asked one day, he goes, that seems kind of small for a city the size of Fort Worth. And this is somebody new on board with us, and I explained to him, I said, well, the 20,000, I said, there are very few cities the size of Fort Worth involved in this. A lot of them are cities of 25,000 people, and so these goals, they have to be a little bit smaller because most of the runs aren't in cities this size. And I said, however, our 20,000 goal, Ed Bach and I talked about it and said, we want to, and we talked to the foundation, said we want to raise our goal to $50,000 for us is our goal for donations and sponsorship. We got to 46,500 last week, and you know, with 10 weeks
Yeah,
left,
I think we'll make it.
I think we'll make it. You know, so for anybody listening that would like to donate, like to be a part of that, like to help us reach that goal, again, just go to the website, Instagram, Facebook. You know, shoot us a message and let us know how you want to help, and we'll get you there.
Very good.
All right.
And weather will be good.
We
Starts
thank you
right now.
for being here today. We thank you for your service
Yeah,
to
for
our
sure.
to our city and,
Yeah.
and your family's service to our city.
Yep.
And Larry, thank you for
Yes,
the
sir.
way you honor the military, the veterans, but also the first responders. So
Yeah, no doubt. Thank you.
You're a great supporter of all of us, and we really appreciate that. Roll call's the 25th.
25th. RSVP line will open Monday.
Okay, and that's coming up. So
And we got a lot of stuff going on at the October 25th, or August 25th.
August.
I got October on the brain now.
yeah, we've also got a clay shoot the day after that. October
15th.
15th, Defender Outdoors.
Hmm.
And you go to roll-call.org and learn more about the clay shoot.
Yep.
And that's our
That's our one big
That's
event.
our one big event.
Fundraiser for the year to fund the lunches.
we thank y'all for being part of, thank you, Winky, for being part of this today. And we'll see you on Hometown Heroes next week.
All right. Thanks, Rick. Appreciate it. Yeah.
Oh, great meeting.
I want to show you a video right quick.